Okay, today we're going to start a new video feature called Boxrec Profile, and I'm going to start with Earnie Shavers. I'm going to try and give shine to fighters who didn't really get all that much shine, but they played a pivotal part in the history of boxing. So, Earnie Shavers, born in Garland, Alabama, USA, a resident of Warren, Ohio, USA, even though I'm sure Ernie married a British woman and he was either living in the northeast or somewhere near Merseyside. And for those who don't know, Merseyside is near Liverpool. That's the nearest landmark city I can think of. He stood at 6 foot, orthodox stance, obviously a heavyweight, born on the 31st of August 1945. His full name is Earnie D. Shavers. Now, the reason I'm focusing on Ernie first is because when we done the 60s and 70s heavyweight tournament, a few of the guys wasn't sure if Ernie should have been in there. Well, Ernie is arguably the hardest punching fighter ever to walk between the ropes. Now, before you start saying, oh no, he's not, he's rubbish and this and that. Yeah, he lost 14 times, 7 losses by a KO, 7 on points. Ernie was probably never taught how to box correctly or to his capacity. He's one of them guys who went in the gym, was tough, and just naturally had a lot of power, just had raw power. And that's what he traded on. But when you're talking about 68 KOs out of 74 wins, then, we've got to keep it real. You know what I'm saying? And just for trivia and a funny statistic, one of his first bouts was against somebody named Leroy. And you say, there's nothing wrong with that. No. The guy's first name was Lee, and his surname was Roy. That shit is fucking... Oh, man. But anyway, I laugh at stupid things, so some things I find funny, you might not find funny. Now, look, I'm not putting Ernie in there to say he's one of the greatest heavyweights ever, because he wasn't. It's just the raw power. So, he lost on his third fight to someone named Stan Johnson. He won his first 2 fights by KO. Then he goes on what looks like here a 7 or 10 KO win streak before somebody named Ron Stander, who is probably what we'd call a trial horse or a journeyman. He fought the likes of Frazier, got knocked out by Frazier. He drew his guys like Manuel Ramos, who was a fringe contender. He actually beat Manuel Ramos, what I'm saying here. Lost to guys like Ken Norton. Nothing great at all. But this was Shavers. Shavers was very erratic. He was very erratic. Like, he'd lose to guys like Ron Stander, who KO'd Ernie in 5. And, like I'm saying before, he lost to Stan Johnson. Who's Stan Johnson? But after the Stander loss, he goes on another of his long KO streaks, just knocking everyone out early. You know what I'm saying? He outpoints Vicente Rondon, who was a WBA light heavyweight champion, which I knew, which I followed up. Yes, he was. He actually got knocked out by the great Bob Foster in a vicious knockout. That knockout was just vicious, man. Bob Foster, man. Jesus Christ. Y'all don't know. Ask Blood Boxing about Bob Foster, man. He'll tell you. Leroy Caldwell, fringe contender back in the days. Nothing special. He knocked him out in 2. He TKO'd Jimmy Young. Now, Jimmy Young is an enigma in the heavyweight division. I've only seen him fight the one time against Muhammad Ali. And yeah, you can argue that he should have got the nod. But Jimmy Young was just one skillful dude. People don't realize how skillful this dude was. And he's one of them unsung heavyweight fighters from the 70s. Heavyweight boxing in the 70s is the toughest era ever. Period. And that's not even a point of argument. He TKO'd Jimmy Young in 3. Great result. Let's not forget that Jimmy Young floored and outpointed George Foreman and handed him his second loss after Ali and forced him into his first retirement back in the 70s. He knocked out Jimmy Ellis in one with a brutal uppercut to the head, man. And like, you see, the thing is, man, people talk about punches, but when you look at their Boxrec records, you see TKO here, TKO there. So a lot of them probably cuts or maybe disputed stoppages. Look at Ernie's. You're going to see KOs, putting people to sleep, right? Jimmy Ellis was Muhammad Ali's chief sparring partner. He also won the unification tournament when Ali couldn't fight due to the Vietnam War shit and all of that stuff there. He won the unification tournament and he had to beat guys like Oscar Bonavina, I think Floyd Patterson, Jerry Quarry, right? So Jimmy Ellis wasn't no joke, and he didn't get blown out of there like that unless he came up against guys like Frazier. But Shavers dusted him off in one. You see, if I didn't put Shavers in there, I would have had to put Jimmy Ellis in there or someone like that, because these are unsung good heavyweight fighters, right? The reason I put Shavers in there is just for the KO factor, just because KO punching, it gives you an extra dynamic to think about. He was just a very appetizing addition into the tournament. And the truth is, how much people know about Jimmy Ellis today? That's why what's becoming a struggle with doing these tournaments is there's fighters that should be in there, but how much do people know about them? You see, Ellis was a champion, a unification tournament winner, but even though Shavers wasn't never a champion, casual fans, young cats today into boxing, they all know that name Shavers because the historians always bring him up, one of the biggest punchers ever to step in the ring. And that's what I thought would be an interesting addition into the tournament. Like I said, this video isn't about saying how great Earnie Shavers was, if we're talking about pound for pound or being a ranked contender. He was very erratic. In his next fight, he lost to Jerry Quarry, got TKO'd in a round, you know. One KO win after that. He loses to somebody named Bob Stallings. Who? On points, you know. Draws with Jimmy Young, another good result. A few KOs later, he comes up against Ron Lyle. Ron Lyle's the guy who had the classic heavyweight battles with George Foreman. He floored George about 3 times and got floored a whole heap of times himself and was eventually knocked out by Foreman. And he was a tough contender, a tough heavyweight contender. Lyle managed to get him out of there by TKO in the 6th. And yeah, it was a thriller by all accounts. Lyle was knocked down in the 2nd round. He beat someone named Henry Clark, who statistically had a great record, I remember, but I don't think he was that great. Roy Williams, however, was a very tough contender, and Ernie TKO'd Roy Williams in a great battle, where he went down in the 10th before stopping Williams himself. He went the distance with Muhammad Ali in a challenge for the world title. Muhammad Ali nicknamed him the Acorn because he was so tough. This fight, some people actually attribute to, you know, some of Ali's illnesses, because Ernie did crack him, and he cracked him hard. But the thing with, you see, Ali's weakness was his chin. Hear me out. Hear me out. Not because he had a weak chin, but he had a too good a chin. Floyd Patterson said it. He said his chin's too good, so that's why he's taking so much punishment. He could take too much punishment. It's actually a weakness. It didn't actually help him in the end, physically. I'm talking about in his social life. Yeah? Ali was able to absorb blows that average human just couldn't even think about, you know? That's why when people say, oh, these big Russians would knock him out easy, and, you know, you just make me laugh, really, because all you're going by is size. Size only does so much, you know? Fighting spirit, know-how, and the will to win overcome size. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. He took on Larry Holmes in a eliminator for the WBC title. He lost a 12-round decision to Holmes. A few KO wins later, he knocks out Ken Norton in 1 round. In 1 round. In 1979. And just to answer a few inquiries, Ken Norton had his major car accident in 1986. He retired in 1981. So no, the car crash never impaired none of Ken Norton's ring performances. And Ernie knocked him out in a round. You know? He fought Larry Holmes again. This time, Larry was a world champion. A good world champion. And Shavers decked Holmes. I can't remember if it was a left or right, to be honest. It was a vicious punch, and it just shook Holmes to his foundation. And he barely beat the count. Like, Holmes used a bit of kidology on the referee, like walked away from him, because if the referee probably had looked in his eyes when he got up, he probably would have stopped it. But Holmes was very clever. He was very shrewd in there. And he walked away from the referee and sort of stalled the 8 count or whatever. You know, they always talk about, the historians always talk about Larry Holmes' recuperative powers, and he certainly proved them in that fight there. But Holmes came back. Holmes came back and he TKO'd Ernie in 11 rounds. Like, he was just thundering shots into Ernie's head, and Ernie wouldn't go down. But great fight. Great fight. Once again, more erratic form. He loses to someone named Bernardo Mercado, who shouldn't be slept on either. I remember him being attributed for knocking out Trevor Berbick in a round. And Bernardo was a power puncher, but he was erratic like Ernie too, you know. In the twilight years of Ernie's career, he gets TKO'd by Randall Tex Cobb, who was an actor plus fighter. You know, Randall was a contender back in the 70s and early 80s. He's most famous for, in the ring, his fight with Larry Holmes, which went the distance. Randall was very durable. Very durable fighter. Tough guy, you know. Wasn't much of a fighter really, but very tough. And yeah, as I said, the fight went the distance, and he's most memorable for because the fight was so one-sided that Howard Cosell was apparently disgusted at the one-sided matchup that he walked away from boxing after that fight. He walked away from the commentary after that. So they used to make jokes about it. I remember whether it was a good thing that Randall Cobb got rid of him or not. You know, but Howard Cosell was a legend. And Ernie wasn't finished. You know. He TKO'd a fringe contender named Jeff Sims, who did his best work in the 80s. And he also TKO'd Joe Bugner in 2 rounds. Now, Joe Bugner was very durable, you know. Former Commonwealth, European and British champion. He took Muhammad Ali the distance twice, and he went the distance with Frazier, in which was a very tough fight, actually. Yeah? And he managed to drop Bugner and stop him on cuts. Not many people used to get rid of Bugner like that. But Ernie managed to do it. And then for the rest of his career, you know, he lost to some no-names and knocked out a few more people. James Tillis managed to outpoint him over 10. James Quick Tillis, the first man to take Mike Tyson the distance, actually. Yes, he was. Yes. And there you have it. This is Earnie Shavers. I'm recommending that if you have time to go on YouTube and put some of his fights on so you can witness the obvious power the man has, you know. Crude, but powerful. Crude, but very powerful. So this is the first Boxrec Profile. Earnie Shavers, people. Earnie Shavers.